Welcome viewers to Historical Journeys. Even though they are one of history's most well-known civilizations, the majority of us don't actually know much about how life was like for Vikings in the 800s. However, despite the widespread perception of a vulgar society, researchers continue to accumulate more and more evidence to support their claims. While some of the Vikings' accomplishments appear to be quite contemporary, you should examine them for yourself. Strange facts about Viking life are revealed by a new historical artifact. But before we get started, if you're enjoying this video, show us some love by subscribing. It's the best way to support us and never miss out. Let's get started. Old Norse Viking was a word that meant pirate trade, and Vikings never called themselves that. So the Scandinavians would utilize the expression going Viking while talking about bandits. However, the word started to be used a lot as a noun over time. Vikings never wore horned protective caps. The normal confusion might have begun when 19th century painters portrayed these champions with horned headpieces in view of disparaging depictions from Northern Europeans. Their richness goddess Freya was known to have a chariot pulled by to record shaded felines, and cats were kept around to take out bothers as well as go about as fuzzy allies to cat cordial Vikings. To light blazes, Vikings heated up a parasite called fruths from Antareus in human pee for a couple of days. After that, they brutally crushed the fungus, which was soaked in urine, until it developed a texture resembling a texture and began to spark. The fungus charcloth was able to smolder for days thanks to the sodium nitrate in the urine, and were sure the fire smelled wonderful. As per history, the Vikings esteemed actual strength a ton since they relied upon their actual well-being as a method for an independent way of life, as well with respect to endurance overall. Skiing equipment fragments found in 1960 date back to 6000 BC. In addition to the fact that it was a quick method for getting around, yet Vikings likewise involved skis for serious game. They delighted in it such a lot of that they revered Taller, who was an exacting divine force of skiing. The fact that Vikings made tweezers, razors, combs, and deer cleaners from both animal bones and antlers shows that they were fairly clean people. History detailed they washed week by week and swam in natural aquifers. The painting of Viking shields had nothing to do with sentimentality or decoration. Despite the fact that wood isn't the strongest material, it was used to conceal the wood grain. The paint seals the material and prevents it from cracking. In the heat of battle, the designs also helped the warriors distinguish between friends and foes. A portion of history's best boat manufacturers, Vikings are generally known for their long boat plan, which was motored by a combo of labor supply and wind. Numerous other cultures adopted long ships, which served as a blueprint for shipbuilding for centuries. A few Vikings were totally crazy, no in a real sense. Berserkers were powerful warriors. They wore creature pelts in fight, and battled in a medication and liquor prompted decipher rage. This is where the word wild comes from. Eyeliner made of crushed antimony, burned almonds, lead, oxidized copper ash, and soft semi-precious stones was worn by the Vikings. In addition to providing them with the desire for a glamorous smoky-eyed look, the liner actually shielded their vision from the glare of the sun. They likewise developed vegetables like onions, beans, and cabbage, and owned domesticated animals like pigs, sheep, goats, cows, geese, and chickens. History revealed ongoing hereditary affirmation that a Viking champion, which was a high-status position, could frequently be a lady. Specialists at Stockholm and Uppsala colleges tracked down more proof. These scientists found a few fight weapons to ponies and a full game board set covered in the grave of a female Viking skeleton. The game board meant that she was a higher positioning soldier with information on procedures. Scandinavian Viking ladies could claim property and interest for separate. The most valued ownership a Viking could possess was a blade, an image of riches. Most Vikings couldn't bear the cost of swords. Notwithstanding, Vikings both dreaded and adored Valkyries, who in Norse folklore were strong female creatures commended by the strong sky god. Frequently, the Valkyrie heroes or chooser of the killed concluded who was bound to live and fight. What's more, who was bound to pass on, known to partake in a cocktail from time to time. Vikings polished off a lot of mead, which comprises of 3 later matured fixings: honey, yeast, and water. Honey was really the main sugar known to the Norse. To support their farms, the Vikings exchanged slaves or thralls for labor. Sadly, illegal exploitation was likewise a well-known monetary exchange for the Vikings, as a large number of them gained abundance by snatching young men and ladies from a few regions in northern Europe. Kinds of the irresistible skin illness found in human leftovers in Dublin were very like those connected to Middle-Age Scandinavia, and infectious diseases and foe strikes were just 2 of the most strange parts of a middle-aged laborer's life. What were laborer homes like? They were little designs with covered rooftops intended to be not difficult to fix. Serfs called these little abodes crock houses, regardless of the climate. They weren't truly agreeable spots to be. Winters were brutal and summers were intolerably sweltering, and on second thought of a canine nestled into the finish of their beds. Workers did things apiece in an unexpected way. Peasants gathered their livestock at night and brought them inside with the rest of the family. Cows, pigs, and chickens all congregated in the crock house for a variety of reasons. Occasionally, the animals escaped on their own. A peasant family was devastated when they lost their animals. Living with your animals and livestock was difficult. Peasants in medieval Europe swatted and scratched fleas, lice, and other insects while they slept. At the point when they weren't working the land at the entire hours, laborers were paying robust measures of duties. Nobody was absolved when the expense man called authorities acknowledged types of non-cash money like seeds, which weren't precisely modest. Sleep management was handled very differently in medieval Europe. As opposed to resigning to bed for the evening, laborers broke long stretches of rest into more modest editions. They'd nap for 2 to 4 hours just to awaken and do different exercises like work, engage in sexual relations, or even take off from the house to visit companions. Then they'd return home to bed for a couple of additional hours. At the point when a worker had a second to rest from the apparently endless work of working their own territory. Notwithstanding the constrained work owed to masters, the congregation likewise had resolute guidelines about sweat value. However, this neglected work was managed without grumbling. Not taking part was viewed as a transgression. Sunday was the only day off for peasants at the conclusion of a long and exhausting week. Now and again, the congregation offered perusing examples to laborer kids. In any case, beyond their confidence, laborers had a couple of extra brilliant lights in their troublesome lives. All things considered, in the medieval times, a common family outing included going to a bear teasing. Swarms assembled to observe canines assault a fastened bear who might eventually be free down, execute the canines. Be that as it may, for those not keen on bear versus canine fights until the very end, there was the other famous interest of cockfighting, or even a rendition of soccer, which wasn't vastly improved. Medieval peasants played football or soccer a lot, but you had to be willing to get hurt. Things developed so awful that in 1363, Lord Edward III made playing soccer an imprisonable offense. Brutality wasn't something laborers appreciated using any and all means. Despite contradictory codes of chivalry, physical punishment, domestic violence, and marriage were socially acceptable responses. Sometimes, extreme financial desperation, limited options, and high tensions led to violence, which eventually escalated. In the Middle Ages, society's lower classes were not content to tolerate injustice. Peasants quietly organized and participated in protests against a man. The most terrible part about living in the least level of archaic culture was the absence of privileges. On the off chance that somebody blamed a laborer, or more regrettable, a serf, carrying on with an existence of servitude, the blamed was at the leniency for the punisher. In a few extreme cases, the discipline was fierce and horrible, as live entombment. Water was significantly more important in the medieval times for its wide exhibit of purposes. The first stop in quite a while morning was the close-by water source, presumably a stream where they unloaded their rotten can of human waste. If you want to know if their waste ended up directly in their drinking and bathing water, the answer is a horrifying yes. Running water wasn't yet a convenience in bygone eras, so even the cultural elites were a long way from new as daisies. According to some historians, the typical peasant only bathed twice during their lifetimes, once at birth and once after death. Peasants who were looking for a rare scrub went to stews, what we now call a public bath, where they stripped off and simmered together in the water. However, the majority of them admittedly didn't go there to wash their hands. It was a gold mine for pickpockets to rifle through the garments that bathers cast to the side. Overly controlling guardians be cautioned, the existences of laborer kids will make you miserable. Tutoring was not feasible for youngsters in that frame of mind of society. While so frequently since the beginning of time, ladies were abused to such an extent that they weren't permitted to partake in that frame of mind of society. Particularly, peasant women were extremely busy. No, it was anything but an exceptionally moderate society. However, ladies, particularly on the lower rungs, held a great deal of liability. Peasants had the lowest life expectancy of any class in medieval society due to their filthy conditions and limited resources. In just 5 years, the Black Death claimed the lives of 25 million people, making it the main cause. What's more, since serfs lived just an expected 35 years by and large, any reasonable person would agree a considerable lot of those passings were the least fortunate of poor people. Thanks for watching. If you don't want to miss out on any of our upcoming videos, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. It's the best way to stay in the loop.